Hello and welcome to episode number 24 of the Launch and Beyond podcast. When we think of great leaders, we reflect on how great they were in being able to move and inspire their people to think greater, to aim higher, and sometimes to help their same people find something within themselves they never knew they even possessed, to help them go from good to great. And when we study some of these greatest leaders throughout history, we realize that many of them had to go through their own challenges and struggles to grow into the role and identity of a great leader. For some, the pathway was to stretch themselves, to get out of their own comfort zone, and to be the person the situation required of them. For others, it involved getting clear on who they are and what they stand for. And the process of getting to that place, many realized that they can't please everyone all the time. Even when they do their very best, with the best intentions, there'll be people who disagree with the direction, the thinking, and the actions taken by the leader. When faced with this situation, many aspiring leaders will attempt to stay popular with their followers, to not rock the boat, and attempt to please everyone. Sadly, this cannot be the case. In attempting to please everyone, they end up not only confusing the general population who are unclear of who they are and what they stand for, but also potentially run the risk of losing the people who've been supporting them because of their indecisiveness, lack of clarity, and lack of leadership. In this week's podcast, we discuss the difficult journey each leader needs to travel to within their business, in their community, in associations or groups that they're involved in, or even within their own personal lives. And that journey, that of the pleaser to the leader. We hope you enjoy it. Okay, Adam, I'm really excited about this episode, and I feel it's something that's going to be very beneficial to our listeners, particularly in helping them level up and play at a much higher game. It will potentially trigger a lot of our podcast listeners, but hey, you know what? In the feedback that we've had from a lot of our listeners, the podcast where we thought we've brought up tough topics and leaned in and brought up these difficult discussion points have been the ones that the feedback we've gotten back were the ones that had the biggest impact on them. And I think this is going to be one of those as well too. When someone in business aims to not only just make a difference, they want to develop their leadership skills within themselves, they need to go through this pathway, this process of identifying the difference between being a pleaser and a leader. So I'm really looking forward to immersing ourselves in this topic and where it'll take us. So how about we check in with each other prior to launching into the podcast? How's your week been?
Well, just two things before I go into that.
Yep.
First thing is, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been commenting and sending us messages. It actually leads us in a great direction, and then we can actually come forward and do different topics. And we know what's bringing value to you.
Yep.
We see the metrics, we hear your comments, and we love that. So please keep it up.
Yep.
Secondly, I didn't read this topic this week.
That's fine.
But as you did your intro, I just thought about 6 or 7 different things just straight off the bat. I'm like, I've got all the examples now, and I understand what's happening here. Probably sounds bad that I haven't looked into it, but
I actually never considered it that way because what we want is, yes, there's frame and structure to the program, and that there's, because we've got a particular outcome we work on. We want to make sure that people find and identify points and things that make a difference. Having you and I just ramble on about everything will be great and entertaining, but we'll lose people.
yeah.
So, but what it also does is that if it's so rigid, so organized that there's no innovation in there, it goes against everything that we've been talking about in our program. So, the actual right mix of structure and innovation, planning and innovation and improvising, I think is the right fit for the type of program and product we're putting out there.
Well, I think it's the little bit of a rebel in me that when I was
Okay.
in university, you'd see the lecturer talk word for word off the slides that they're presenting in front of you, and I just fell asleep every single time. Actually, I went to the pool hall downstairs, and I became a whiz at playing pool. But yeah, the second thing I wanted to touch on as well was you mentioned that our listeners have been commenting on us talking about the tough topics.
Yeah.
And everyone paints entrepreneurship as this beautiful rainbow, the happy place. You can make all the money and have no headaches in your life.
Yeah.
But we come back and go, hey, wait, you can have that, but you got to realize there's this part of the business as well. And I find that being true and honest to everyone. And I find that that's why people are interacting and enjoying those ones the most, because they're seeing a different light of entrepreneurship.
Because if we're seduced by the highlight reel that
Yeah.
we see, we believe that this is what's happening, and reality is that it's not the case. And I guess the whole intention of the podcast was to teach and to communicate the true essence of it. Basically, show people the principles that are transferable no matter what industry you're working in, but then also be honest and transparent about the journey and say, hey, you know what? It's not sunshine and rainbow all the time. There are challenges. However, this is what we've found along the way that's really helped us get through this, and we want to share it with you.
Yep. That's perfect. I can't even add to that. So well done. Apart from that, my week's been really good this week. I've had some up and downs as every week, and that's what we try and reveal here in the podcast. But I'm having some troubles, obviously, with the COVID stuff happening, and the fallout is coming now for my business, whereas it wasn't happening during the height of it. And now that I know that we've got a couple of weeks of downtime coming up, I've started reflecting and going, all right, now I can actually do more product development, and I can look at what's next for our business. And I'm flipping that negative and making it into a positive. It gives me more time just to sit down, relax, reflect, clean, change stuff, and then move forward. But at the same time, this week I got some new equipment. I got new oven sets and new trays and new trolleys and more efficient processes. So it's almost like I had the downtime. I got the toys.
Yep.
Now let's play.
Yeah.
And it works.
You know how you said that? You posted the other day, you said, hey, look at this has arrived. And the cheeky part of me saw this delivery, and I wasn't sure if it was more cameras that you were actually organising doing, but
they're in the next delivery.
They're in the next delivery. Okay, great.
I've had these ones for about 3 weeks. I'm done with them. We got the next ones coming. No, so that's a part of entrepreneurship that you've got to deal with, because it's not always rainbows and it's not always sunshine. It's about your mindset. How are you going to flip it and come back and go, hey, all right, it's a shit time now. What are we going to do?
Yep.
All right. How was your week?
Well, day 69 of 75 hard.
Good number.
I've got to say, mentally just cooked, absolutely cooked. So thank goodness, we weren't rolling the cameras and the mics about 25 minutes before we started, because I think it was just the download, the deliriousness of the fatigue coming through. So I've really learned a lot about myself in the whole process, and I'm really looking forward to just catching up on some sleep. As much as I've learnt in the process how mentally strong I am, I could really use some sleep. So I'm looking forward to catching up on that.
Sleep? What's sleep?
Sleep. Well, it's,
remember when you were telling me sleep is number one priority?
Yeah, I know. They've come to haunt me here as well. But really, what I've learned, particularly through this process, is just adapting. There are times where the hardest parts of it weren't the parts that I thought were going to be hard, and then other times the simplest thing, the thing that I'd not normally even bat an eyelid, was harder. So it's this consistent cycle and change, which I've learned a lot about in myself too. But intermixed with that, I had some great wins this week. I had an invitation to, I haven't even mentioned to you, Adam, I had an invitation of all the things we spoke about before the podcast.
You don't tell me everything.
I did, man. I kept something from it. No, but I had an invitation to speak at an event
cool.
overseas in Puerto Rico.
Oh, nice.
Next year in March. The only doubt, I said yes, but whether we can fly out of the country or not, that's a different story. But, sometimes you say yes and then work out how. But,
we'll get you on a ship somehow and, sell you across the ocean.
I don't know. So I don't know how it will be, but it's a great event. Really excited, really humbled to have been invited to speak in there. So whether our borders are open enough for that to be the case remains.
Well, private jets don't need to adhere to all the other custom stuff. They just fly in, go in. Yeah, all these really rich, super rich people have been flying private around the world and, not having to worry about the lockdowns.
Okay, I didn't know
They just go to private airports, land, and see you later.
Okay.
So there you go. There's an option.
Fantastic. Well, maybe that's what I need to look into as well too. So no what's the word? Not incubation, the isolation for them once they self-quarantine?
No. Some people just go for the day or two and then come back, and that's it.
Oh,
you wouldn't even know, because they leave from a private place. They arrive at a private place and back.
Okay. I didn't know.
There you go. Well, maybe
Anyway, let's
loopholes everywhere.
I was gonna
I'll
say,
find you a loophole.
okay, thanks for the loophole. Let's get stuck into today because it's a big topic. As I said, it's a one that will potentially trigger some people, and there's going to be is really important because this topic prevents a lot of people from developing into the leader they need to be or could be, and if they want to basically develop into the leader, they need to move from a pleaser to a leader, and but a lot of them are inflicted by what we call the disease to please. Doesn't sound great when I say it that way, but the disease to please is really, when we break it down, disease is more about, it's an expanded context than the one that you commonly see in health. Right? It means a particular quality or disposition regarded as affecting a person or a group of people. So what this means to me when I see that interpretation or that alternative interpretation of that is that there's a tendency on pleasing everyone. And as a result of that, it's affecting not only you, but the group of people around you who you're responsible for as a leader. So this is what I mean by that statement. So any thoughts on that, Adam, before we press on?
No, you keep going.
All right. So when you see people pleasers, when you think, I should say, of the people pleasers, quite often people think it's not just nice people who have gone overboard trying to make everyone happy. The people who we talk about, the disease to please, are the people who are constantly saying yes to situations when they really should be saying no. For them, the uncontrollable need to have that elusive approval of others comes from, for want of a better description, an addiction. They're needing that self affirmation from someone to please them in order to feel something in themselves. And we talked a lot about the fear of rejection back in, I think it was episode 17. This could be seen as an extension of that. Those potential feelings of being rejected create a response or emotion within an individual that starts altering the behavior, starts altering the way they go about doing things. So it could be debilitating things such as a fear of confrontation or not wanting people to dislike them, that forces people to compensate in such a self-defensive way by bringing up, which in some circles is called a mask. We've referred to that in the past. Masks are kind of like something that we start to bring up to that alters the behavior, that alters the what we show the world. And really, this niceness or people pleasing mask that I mentioned, quite often you bring it up to show the world, hey, this is an alternative behavior that I'm adopting, so as to not to polarize you and not risk you not liking me.
Yeah, this sounds like the alter ego version of the codependent triangle. Instead of being a rescuer, you're a pleaser. Instead of
Yeah,
constantly wanting to rescue something, you're doing it just so that you get some type of
yeah,
benefit. And
yeah.
I don't know if there's some alter ego or alter universe drama triangle that has the pleaser in there, but
Well, there's a lot of in Lewis Howe's book, The Mask of Masculinity, which we referred to in the past,
yep,
he talks a lot about that. The the pleaser mask, or the person who's the pleaser, is really doing it from, it's almost a codependent sort of situation. They're not comfortable in their own skin, so as a result of that, they're seeking to receive validation from somebody else. Hey, if I do this or if I behave, you'll like me, and if you like me, then I like me,
yeah,
or I feel comfortable, and all those kind of scenarios. So it alters the behavior. The context and the reason why it's important within this podcast is you can't do that as a leader all the time.
yeah,
And if you're constantly, it's almost chameleon esque, like sometimes a chameleon starts adapting the characteristics and the properties of people around them for a safety measure. And in a lot of ways, that's what masks are. They actually alter your authentic expression. They're reflective of what the situation has required. And sometimes it's survival based. Sometimes it's really just, I want to fit in. So consequently, I'll start altering my behavior. The problem with that is, particularly in the context of leadership, when you're trying to please everybody, you end up basically disappointing everybody.
yeah. And it's a tough situation to be a leader in anything. I notice when you go into, say, a seminar and then you get put in a group, you're almost the reluctant one to step up, even though you might know that you could do it better than everyone else, but you're just like, let's see how this plays out. And I feel like they're probably the better leaders because they scope the group first before, like, you just come in and be, oh, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And then there's some people who are just like, oh yeah, let's do that. And it's like, you've paid 2 grand to be at this seminar,
Yep.
like, speak up and be a leader yourself. And yeah, it's a funny thing. Trying to be a leader. And this one was one I think when I was in kitchens, it was a tough one to get around. Now that I'm not, when I'm have my own business, I've one of my staff members. You actually know him. We met at jiu-jitsu, past staff member
Mhm.
now. Um, Basically, he used to say, I love working for you because you just tell me black and white. If you don't like something, you tell me, and if you like it, you tell me, and that's it. And there's no emotion to it. It's just a directive, and that's it. And he was learned enough to understand that he wasn't taking it personally,
Yeah.
and there was a big difference in that. So it was good that I harnessed him in a team, and he understood that because he had done his own development and
Yeah.
reflection. But yeah, it's never personal, not with me.
Yeah. And in terms of leadership, the number one trait that defines successful people is decisiveness.
Yeah,
And so a lot of the times, if you're going to follow someone and they're decisive, there's okay, I'm going to follow you because energetically and also um, from a point of view of certainty, they look like they're going in the right direction. Now, granted, that may not be the case, and but so many times you see people going, I am charging this way, and they do it with such conviction and certainty that they get a band of followers that follow them, and somewhere along the way the leader may go, hey, you know what, this isn't the right way, we're now going east, and they turn around with the same level of certainty, people follow them. But if you're at the start of a journey and you're indecisive and you're not sure and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe here, maybe, you lose your people.
well,
And part of that too, so I was just going to say, is part of that, if there's that pleasing component, if you're trying to be a leader by committee all the time and everything is the case in there, everything becomes a discussion without the head lead or someone leading, and that becomes, it works in certain organizations where you want basically discussion and you don't want groupthink, but in situations where you need to take decisive action, you quite often need a leader, and to be that leader, you can't be the person who's constantly trying to please everybody.
yeah, well, I was going to say an off the cuff remark there, like just exactly how cult leaders run. You know, they're certain, and
Yeah,
people just follow them with their
yeah,
lives.
yeah.
It's crazy. Um, but during the week, I've heard about 4 or 5 of my close friends having meetings that go for 2 or 3 hours long. Some I've heard one up to 4 hours, and I'm like, but what do you discuss in that
Mm,
time? Like, isn't there like this is the agenda? Let's put 2 words forward each, or like five, like 2 sentences each. Let's make a decision and go.
yeah,
Let's not discuss it for half an hour each topic. Otherwise, you're just going to
yeah.
lose people's interest, and then the best result doesn't come from your business because you're just up in the air and trying to please that person and that person. And in the end, you might action all this, and in 3 weeks, you're going to have to change it anyway because it's not working out for you.
Yeah, there's a difference between um, collaborating. There's a difference between collecting information from different people. But at the end of the day, you might have four trusted people who you source information from. At the end of it, you've just got to go, right, this is the decision we're making, and we move on. Rather than trying to do it the other way around, where you're going, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? How do I please and water it down to make everybody happy? It dilutes the solution, dilutes the direction, and that's what we're basically talking about in there as well. So it's okay to collaborate and seek counsel and opinion from wise people around there. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. You have to be the leader, and that's not always going to be popular with everybody.
Yeah, and my response to these people were like, I schedule my meetings for 15 minutes
Mm,
and that's it.
mm.
And they're like, what, 15 minutes? I go, well, when you schedule for 15 minutes, people know that it's business only.
Yep.
And we come in, we make decisions and we move. You're not there to please people. You're not there to go, actually, yeah, I think the pink color on the wall might look better than yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go with that. It's like, all right, let's just move. Let's decorate this. Let's go.
Yeah. So that's like I said. So you're gonna annoy the people who want to discuss the 65 variations of that color. But the reality is, what you're talking about is a side of leadership, of direction, of decisiveness to help move forward. We need the people who do the research, who find out all the options, narrow them down, and in the model that you're talking about, the power, the value of that person to you is someone who's done the research, come back and said, "Look, I found three things to do this way, this way, this way. What would you like to do?" And you go, "That one, done, move on," rather than a whole palaver and a whole narrative around each and every one of those options.
Yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head.
Awesome. So let's keep going with this. And I really like to talk to people about what being a pleaser is about. And some people might have a passing understanding of it. let's look at a 19, sorry, not a 2017 article in Psychology Today, which talked about the 10 signs that you are potentially a people pleaser. So I'm going to go through these. Just a reminder that we've got all this in show note format for you, so you can go through that now. But once the podcast is released, you'll have reference to these examples, which you might find really helpful in this podcast particularly. So
Yeah, and sometimes if we brush over topics a little bit too quick because something resonates with us more, and we like topic number 4, but you liked number 6, you can go back and look at the show notes
Yep.
and do your own research
Yep.
on that.
Yep.
And that's why we have the resource up.
Great, great. So thank you for always making those available to everybody, Adam. That has been when you talk about feedback, the things that people really appreciate and enjoy, as you said, is the structure. We got some some feedback this week about people appreciating the structure and the content and feedback, but then also the expansion. And if it was purely just about data, it would be a much shorter program. And I know for some people, it would be better if we just went, here's the data, go,
Yeah,
and it would be a lot shorter. But I guess what personalizes us, but then also brings the podcast information to life, is that when we give people personal examples of how this was relevant to us, or what we learnt from this, or where we got dropped on our backside as a result of a principle that we now share openly, and that allows people to take the learning from our experience and apply it to their life.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Then yeah, that's it. I learn best from other people's examples,
Yep.
except for my parents. If it's my parents, I'm always the rebel. No, I know better.
All right, hello to your mum and dad if they're actually listening to there as well too, Adam. So, the first sign that you could be a people pleaser is that you pretend to agree with everybody, and by pretending to agree with everybody, you do this because you want to be liked, and it may cause you to engage in behaviour that may go against your values. Right? We see this a lot with adolescents, particularly. We see these people who just want to fit in. So pretending to be a pleaser is like, yeah, and just trying to fit into the mold in the group. I think, how about I go through these first,
Yeah, let's
and
just
then we'll
go through.
discuss
Yeah.
them, because otherwise we'll probably get bogged up.
Yeah, I'll take a note if there's something that
Yeah.
specifically jumps through, and
All
if
right,
not,
so
we'll just keep
so
moving
that's why
through.
I bought these two here. So no, the second sign that you could be a pleaser, you feel responsible for how other people feel. Ooh, this is the one that probably will I felt, even saying that, I could feel people listening that would have an effect on them, because at the end of the day, it's not up to you, and it's not your responsibility to make other people happy. It's everybody has and is in charge of their own emotions, and they're not yours. So you can have, and when someone gets emotional about what is being said, it's really their interpretation of that information. And if you place responsibility for their happiness onto you, you're unnecessarily burdening yourself with that responsibility. Whew, that was a big one. As I said, I have a sense that that one's going to come back and be a discussion point. Not necessarily today, but at some point along the way, someone's going to reach out to me. I'm 100% sure. So point number 3 is you apologize often. And quite often we've seen people like that who apologize consistently, frequent apologize about everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So it's usually it can be a sign of a bigger problem. And you just keep apologizing to somebody, it may be an indication of an issue of self-esteem or self-worth. And I guess the takeaway here is you don't need to keep apologizing for being you. And that may not always endear you to other people, but this is a really a indication and symptom. We see that play out all the time when people over apologize for things that they don't need to. Number 4, you feel burdened by the things that you have to do. So if you're a person who's doing a whole lot of things for other people, haven't gotten into the habit of drawing boundaries, you quite often find that your day or schedule is filled with other people's priorities, and you can be overwhelmed and overburdened and unfulfilled because you're not doing things that you want to do for yourself. You're doing it for other people because you feel that that will make them happy, or you didn't want to make them unhappy by saying no at the time. So that was point number 4. Point number 5 is an extension of that, where, and Adam's talked about this before in the book called The Power of No, you said, Adam. I think
Yep.
it was just a
I really have to find that book and,
Yeah,
and find that author because I refer to it all the time.
To it.
Yeah.
It's your go-to book, but
Yeah.
you just can't remember the name. But it's unable to make clear boundaries and saying no. And every time you say a yes to everybody else, you say no to you, and it's basically um, John DeMartini, who Dr. John DeMartini, who've done a lot of work with, calls it the law of the lesser pisser, and it's exactly the same look. He goes, the law of the lesser pisser, yes, the law of the lesser pisser. What it basically means is, given a choice between pissing somebody else off and pissing yourself off, choose pissing somebody else off. Because if you're constantly saying yes to everybody else and no to yourself, you're going to piss yourself off. You're going to get really angry and feel frustrated in the lesser. So get into the habit of saying no.
Well, that eats you away inside.
Correct. Right. Yeah. You should have seen. I wish everybody could have seen the look on your face when I'm just talking about
we got the visual of it, so that's
the law of the lesser pisser. But it's actually you won't forget that. Once you hear that once, you'll go, makes sense, and it's so relevant in that scenario. So number 6 of signs that you might be a pleaser is you feel uncomfortable if someone's angry around you, and if you can't handle the thought of someone being displeased with you, you're more than likely going to get to the point where you're trying to placate, you're trying to um, make them happy, and you run the risk of compromising your values. Now, there's a big disclaimer here. I'm not talking about violence. I'm just talking about, and I'm not talking about unsafe scenarios. I'm talking about people may be triggered by your communication, your view, and what have you. And if you're not true and authentic to yourself about that, you do run the risk of compromising your values because you don't want to see that expression in other people. So constantly being uncomfortable with people's reaction about you, about your views, we see that play out for some people where they start to water it down or vanillarize it down so that it's actually palatable and acceptable to other people, but you're not actually really being true to yourself. So where were we up to? We were up to
That was 6.
So 6. So number 7 is that you signs you could be a pleaser is you start acting like the people around you. Now, it's normal for parts of our personality to be influenced by people who we spend time with. You see that in teenagers, particularly, and the saying, people who like themselves. So you tend to find they dress the same, they look the same, etc. So there's an element of that. But if you start acting like a carbon copy, if you start being them and not you, you're doing it because you want to be liked or fit into that group. This is what we're talking about. So this is how that may play out for some people. Okay, point number 8 is of signs that you may be a people pleaser is you need praise to feel good, and that validation, that external validation that comes from people telling you you've done a great job or well done, that external validation, if you don't have that from other people, it starts minimizing how you feel about yourself. So we see this where people seek that out consistently. They're always looking to basically reference from everybody else other than themselves. Okay, and point number 9 of signs that you could be a pleaser is you go to great lengths to avoid conflict. Now, I think I mentioned before in the past, I think it might have been last week's episode with Sensei Frank about Patrick Lencioni, who talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. He talks about a healthy team has healthy conflict. And when people constantly avoid conflict at all costs, what that means is that you don't end up standing up for the things that are most important to you or people who are most important to you. And so it's interesting is that, and I've heard in relationships a lot of the times, the conflict comes from people who aren't prepared to fight for somebody. They're not prepared to fight for the relationship. They're not prepared to lean in and have those tough conversations. They're just going to go, I'm out, or I leave that alone, or it's easier just to be happy, happy, happy and leave that go. And as a result, you laugh. This point's going to come back again, I'm sure. But it's true. Is healthy conflict is important for innovation, for relationship, for connection, all those things. And if you're constantly avoiding them to keep the peace or keep things happy, it's quite often a sign of something that's a bit of an issue underlying. So number 10, and this is just before we get out into a discussion point of reasons why you might be pleased or indication that you might be pleased, is you don't admit when your feelings are hurt. So if you're not authentic, if you're not being truthful to what is being said and done and what effect that has on you, I'm not talking necessarily about trying to keep someone happy, but if you had a feeling or an emotion and something came up for you and you're not communicating that because you want to keep the peace or you want to everybody happy, that's also an indication that you may be incorporating a mask or trying to um, push down your authentic feelings and what's showing up for you to keep the peace or keep things going. So they're the 10 most uh, or common reasons, not reasons, sorry, indications that you could be a people pleaser. And Adam, I saw you as I was going through those, smiling, frowning, writing job down. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the points that I've raised.
Well, I resonated most with 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9.
Okay, okay. So for
So
the
this is like
advantage
a
of
test.
for the advantage of everybody else who can't memorize and remember what they said,
Yeah.
can you just go through what two, except all those points where that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so you feel responsible of how others feel.
Yeah.
And basically, one of the biggest things I found, or being a leader, especially of a team between two businesses when I had it, and one wasn't doing so well, one of the things I thought or I heard from someone, that changed my mindset. Before, when I was new in business, I'd always be a pleaser and I'd always want to make sure that everyone was happy. And then I realized, if my business gets lost or my job gets lost, will that employee bring bread to my house? Will they look after me when I don't have a business or a job? And once I realized that, that's when my decisions became black and white, because I'm like, that's not how we're going to operate the business.
Yeah.
This is the way. And that took so much thought process out. So when people came to me and go, what's your solution for this? I'd be like, that's my answer. And they go, but that's not right. And I go, well, that's the way that the business is growing. That's the most cost effective, not always most cost effective. Sometimes it's the most expensive way, but that's the way that we can best get on our target and move forward in the future. So the second I had that rule in my life, that if I lose my job or my business, will that person come and, feed and clothe me? And if they would, then you take a bit more leniency. You take their opinion in a little bit more. And as much as I love all my staff and we know everything that's happening, I'm not sure how many of them would come and do that for me. And that's the reality of business and how it is, and life as well.
Yeah. Just when you were saying that, I had this realization over many years of um, being a leader, a health professional, particularly in earlier incarnations of my career. I realized that um, when people would come to us and ask some guidance or even in coaching as well too, you've got to be decisive.
Yeah.
And you have to be the leader they need you to be. And let's face it, when people are consulting you in people putting faith in you, you're the leader in that situation. And my question was always, I'm curious, do you want me to tell you what you need to hear or what you want to hear?
Yeah.
And the if I was a people pleaser, I'll tell people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, of course you can just neglect your health and well-being and everything's going to be okay. But am I actually helping? Am I actually being the person that they need at that time? Am I actually being the person that go, hey, listen, I just got to call it out here. Like, how do you feel or how do you think that these behaviors, these actions, these things that you're doing are actually serving you? And I can either be part of the problem or part of the solution. And if I'm trying to be popular and let you get away with this or let you be off the hook, I'm not actually serving you at the highest level. So that was really helpful for me to confront someone in a healthy sort of a way, not to be scared about having that conversation with them.
Yeah, well, I look at our setup here for the podcast as well. It's great being with someone who's not a pleaser. If you've got an issue, you tell me.
Yep.
And it's not
And vice versa.
and it's not in an aggressive way. It's like, hey, just keep this in mind. All right, that's it. It was done.
Yeah.
That's it. We move on. It's not like, oh, he doesn't like how I do this, or he doesn't appreciate me for doing. I don't have a story behind it. It's this is the way that we want to agree on something, or we should do something, and that's it. We just take it and move forward.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was consulting, and I've brought this story up before. I was working at a giant dairy company, like a multinational dairy company, and they would put billions of dollars into like research. And we're sitting there, and they might have just spent $20,000 on just doing a small production run for us to do a tasting. And I'd come in and I'd taste it, and I go, I don't think that's your product. And they were like, what? We just spent like 20 grand on developing this. I go, well, In my opinion, that's not right. But the other consultant I was working with, he always said, yes, yeah, that's great, that's great. And if it would go to market and they'd spend millions of dollars and it failed, they'd be like, why did it fail? And they go back to the drawing board. And I go, you can't just tell them what they want to hear. All right, yes, they're paying us to be a consultant, but they're telling us what does the industry want, and that's why we're here. And I'll come and say yes or no, and that's it. It's black or white, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
Can we use black and white? It's blue or green. I don't know if we can use black or white anymore. So yeah.
So, what other points resonated with you?
The apologizing too often. When I was starting up, I'd apologize, and I'd apologize a lot. Now I take ownership. So when someone goes, "Who did this?" I go, "Yeah, it was me. I'm sorry." That was the apology. It's not, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I couldn't do it the right way. I really, really wanted to make sure you did this better. I'm really sorry." Now I just take ownership for the problem. I just go, "Yep, that was me. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was the way here. I won't do it again." And that's it.
But can you see what I mean about the energetic? And once someone draws it to your attention,
Yeah.
you go, you look at this and say, okay, I understand what you mean now. Because sometimes there'll be someone who you have a conversation with, and within the space of a minute, they'll have apologized 26 times.
Yeah.
And they haven't mucked up 26 times,
Mm.
but it's their perception of self and their level of worthiness and their level of not assertiveness, but their self esteem
Yeah.
that determines that. So constantly, particularly if they see there's a big differential between themselves and someone they're talking in basically whose presence they're with, they'll constantly be apologizing. And you may have aspirations of doing that, but that's not going to be the case. I mentioned about John DiMartini before. He has a saying that says never look at someone on a pedestal or on a pit.
Yeah.
Is you actually never look at someone in a pedestal because you're always seeing yourself less than, but never look at yourself from the point of view of looking down at someone in a pit because then you see yourself more than.
Yeah.
And when you're seeing people at that level, you're not needing to be apologetic. You can actually be yourself in that instance. And as you said, take ownership if there's a mistake, but not apologize for being you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Yeah. It was like when we were in kitchen specifically, who did this prep? And everyone's looking around, who's going to get yelled at? Who's going And I just go, yeah, it was me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was like, oh, this is great. Well done. Like, it's perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. Other times it was, no, this was wrong. Do it again. But either way, if it's one of those things, if you don't put your hand up, you might not get the glory. All right, sometimes it's going to be bad, sometimes it's going to be good, but just own up to it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
number 4 was the next one that I was looking at, and
You feel burdened by the things you have to do.
yeah, and this is what Gary Vee talks a lot about your parents.
Yeah.
Your parents have an idea of what you should become,
Mhm.
and a lot of people wear that as a burden. I must be that doctor. I must be that lawyer. I must go to university. You know, who and this might sound disrespectful, but some people I know take joy in collecting rubbish. But whose parents ever, woke up and go, "Hey, I want my son or daughter to be a garber, uh, pick up the rubbish from the street." Not many people would have that vision for their child, but some people get so much enjoyment from that. They put their own meaning to it. Like, I'm cleaning up the world, and they enjoy it, and they turn up every day, and they do that job.
Yeah.
But yeah, having or feeling the burden of people around you, and then just being submissive to that and going, "Yep, all right, sorry, I'll try my best to be a lawyer."
And that's true, and that comes down to I'm not sure if we've covered it before, but the projection. You know how we talked about values.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can have what are called parental values,
Yeah.
where you're living the life of your own, but basically you're living your parents' values through your own life. You're looking at societal values, where the values in society are what you're taking on, but you're not clear on how they relate to you. And if you're carrying all these burdens, to me, the analogy I draw in my mind is like wearing a backpack and you're carrying everybody else's priorities in your backpack and you're weighed down by all those and you don't have the awareness that if I took them off, I'd actually, that's me.
Yeah.
But you're weighed down by all the expectations, all the jobs, all the action steps, all the everything for everybody else that you said yes because you couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That burden, it builds and it builds. And sometimes it builds so slowly that you don't even know it's there. And it was almost like today before we started recording, it's day 69 for Jim, and all these like little things that just kept building. And then today, just before we started, it was just like, here's everything,
Well, it was
and
a
it just
download.
came.
It
It
was a
just came
download.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was. It was a download. It was just like, because for everybody listening, we do a check in before we get on the podcast just to get ourselves clear. Because if we're, we have an expectation of each other to show up to be the workshop, to the podcast. I'm thinking, because I've done a lot of workshops. It's exactly what we say too, and that was the preparation before we started the workshop. Before I can show up for you, I got to get my own head right,
yeah,
and that was the process that we went through. Was just downloading that so that by the time we get onto the podcast, we're 100% present in what we need to do. So you're 100% right. That was the process, and the burden. It's the fatigue. I'm not going to lie. I'm exhausted. I'm
yeah.
tired. I'm really fatigued, and but having that opportunity to download that and get my mind clear means I'm 100% present for the podcast right now.
Yeah, and Jim and I, we've always had the agreement that if we don't feel like recording, we just don't record.
Yep. Yep.
And that's it. We want to make a weekly podcast, but if we're just not feeling up to
Yep.
it and we're not going to do the best job possible, we just don't turn up.
Yep.
And we don't adhere to the burden.
Mm.
But we do want to do the weekly podcast, but
Yep.
we never just
Yep.
become,
Yeah.
a victim to that and just go, yeah. I was watching TikTok this morning. And I should get some royalties or something. I watch TikTok and mention it that often, but you feel uncomfortable if someone is angry to you.
Yep.
And there's this guy, I've shown you videos of him before. His name is Jay. He's based in Melbourne. He's a big,
Yes.
masculine type of guy, tattoos, very fit, like, big physique. And he comes over with a lot of masculine energy.
Yep.
But he can be feminine at the
Yep.
same time. And that's the beauty of him as a person. I'd love to meet him if he's out there and listening. But anyway, he was talking about how he got bullied in a workplace, and he goes, "It's not physically, like, because he's such a physical being." He goes, "No, it was more emotional." And he goes, "Yeah, I put myself forward, but the leader wasn't listening. So then he just became a pleaser towards the end, and then he couldn't work there anymore because he became true to himself, and he was like, yeah, I said yes to this for so long, and now it's just a stern no. I've got to leave." And he moved on, and I was just like, doesn't matter if you're being physical, and this is why it came up, because he said it's not about physical or that type. It could be an emotional bullying.
Yep.
And it just hit me that I watched that this morning. It's funny how the content that we
Things are
talk
right.
about, it just
Yeah.
comes around, and we look at, and it's like your brain's a sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just point number 9, you go to great lengths to avoid conflict.
Yep.
Sometimes conflict's not that bad. And as I said before, if Jim or I have an issue with something that we've done during the week, we just come and just go, "Hey, didn't like this. Maybe we can go in this direction," and that's it. And it might we might hype it up before we even get to the room and talk. But Jim and I have worked together now for a little while, and we understand that it's not just it's never going to be taken in that way.
No.
But
Sorry, go on.
yeah, but some other people will hype that story up before they have to actually come to that conversation, and it feels so scary to walk into that situation.
Yeah, there's a few reasons for that. There's a big distinction between conflict and aggression.
Yeah.
Right? And so sometimes people confuse that. Conflict is the ability to lean in and challenge the conversation, the idea, the ideology. Now, that's only going to happen if you feel safe.
Yep.
The only time that's going to happen is if you feel trust. And within a group, within a organization, the only way that someone can challenge the leader, and where it works really, really well, particularly in progressive companies, is where employees, rank and file employees, are able to challenge leadership, and they don't have the fear of the repercussion that's going to come with that, because in doing so, they help the organization develop greater, bigger improvements in how things are done operationally. And so that there's a big difference between
Yep.
the conflict and aggression. But being safe is the only way that's going to work.
Was it you that was telling me that there's some corporations that get everyone to write down their ideas before
Yeah,
a meeting,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you read it out, and then that way it's safe because no one knows who it came from.
Yeah.
You're just reading out the ideas. Who
Yeah.
wants this?
Yeah.
5 hands up, yes. 3
Because-
hands up, no. It's a yes, and that's it.
Because the reason why that works in organizations is because the idea, people don't bring up an idea thinking that, oh, okay, I'm going to challenge leadership. They just the idea is that there's merit in the idea as opposed to who brought that idea up,
Yeah.
and that's why in those scenarios it works because they're looking for the solution, and sometimes they're open enough to say that solution will come from the galleries, not necessarily from the people who are right in the core and the center of it, and the progressive companies that are able to make those distinctions and take the learnings from everywhere are the ones that can move forward really, really quickly or come up with ideas that are left of center that no one even thought they couldn't have thought about. So if the whole central group are exactly the same, look the same, think the same, they're going to come up with the same solutions.
Yeah.
But if someone from out of left field sees the world view in a different way or can bring a different distinction that may not have considered, that can actually help them in ways that never ever considered beforehand.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I'm just thinking about when I was growing up, but when I was thrust into the Young Chefs Club, and I was put in the leadership as the president, I didn't know how to deal with people, especially because I was dealing with the Senior Chefs Club, and young chefs were under 25, so I was still old enough and leading in kitchens to understand, but I was dealing with 45, 50, 55, 60 year olds, and I had to learn how to talk to them, and sometimes you'd have to raise issues to them and not know the response. And it was daunting. And what I found myself doing was slowing the way that I spoke down. But then the feedback I was getting was it sounds almost too
Mm.
condescending. And then I had to change the pace a little bit. But it was me recognizing that if I was yelling at you, or and not yelling in a negative way, you come from, a Greek household, and I come from a Lebanese Turkish, and we're always yelling. It's not anger,
Mm.
it's passion, it's loud. If you don't speak up, you don't get heard.
Yep.
So, me sitting in a meeting of 20 people, if I'm not speaking up, I'm not getting heard. So, I'm coming big and bold, and everyone's like, whoa, why are
Yeah.
you yelling?
Yeah.
So, then I had to realize and take a step back, change the tone of my voice. And then it came too condescending. Then I had
Yeah.
to, ramp it up, just find that little
You just
tweak.
got to calibrate,
Yeah, but
right?
then that's how I avoided a lot of negative conflict because I went back into that normal
Mm.
range.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were the 5 points that stuck out at
Well,
me out of the 10.
they were good. They were good distinctions because, truth be known, at any one time, um, a lot of us will have gone through that process, and that may still come up, and it's actually acting in spite of those feelings. So the feelings are going to happen. It's a case of how we manage those.
Yeah.
So if we're going to develop as a person, as a leader, um, we're going to need to go over those points regularly and remind ourselves and look at them and go, okay, where am I behaving a particular way that's not really serving me in the best possible way? Where do I need to lean in? Where do I need to make some tough decisions? Where do I need to draw some boundaries or take actions? And they're not always going to be comfortable to do that. So to really develop into a leader, you really need to, or you can't really afford to be someone who is a pleaser and is compromising what needs to be done by virtue of your popularity. The truth is, as a leader, if you're going to set a vision, you're going to make a decision or take a course of action, it's said that like the moment you do that, 25% of people will like it and follow you. 50% of the people are going to be undecided or indifferent to your opinion, your vision, your idea. And the 25% aren't going to like it at all. No matter how you sell it to them, they're just not going to take it on board. Even if it's well intentioned, they're going to question your motives and do it all. And particularly in this last 25%, they may even actively work against what you've said and put forward because they don't like the idea. They may not like your hairstyle. Who knows? There's a whole lot of reasons.
There's some people who thought they should have been in that position and gone, that's my job. So it doesn't matter if that's going to make us $1 billion or
Yeah.
that's going to solve the world's issues. I don't like it because that should have been me up there.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's they
Yeah.
just got malice in their heart.
It's sad, but it's true.
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to be the case. So what do you do in that situation if you've got that? Right. So if you're focused on being a pleaser and you're trying to make everybody happy, a lot of people are going to spend a disproportionate amount of time on that last 25%. They're going to try and win them over, trying to um, rally the troops in that last 25%. The reality is, um, that's not really going to happen. The real objective is not to focus on them, but rather the 50% in the middle who are undecided or indifferent. Because if you spend your time there, they're the people who um, can be swayed one way or another. In politics, they call them the swing voters because these are the people who can go one way or another, provided they have enough certainty, enough direction, they've got enough reasons to do that. So if you focus on that middle 50% and endear them to you, your leadership, your capacity, your influence will go go up through the roof. That last 25%, look, let them go because no matter who you are, what you try to be, who you try to please, it ain't going to happen.
Well, this reminds me of, I think, episode 18, our ideal client.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as a person you want to lead. Who's the ideal, or when you're putting an idea out, who's the ideal person you want to come up and support you? And that's who you're pitching to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's being clear on that and realizing that you can't be everything to every person,
Yeah.
whether it's an ideal client or whether as a leader, that's exactly right. You just go, look, I'm sorry, but we're not a right fit. I'm
Yeah.
not a right fit for you. I can water down what I offer. I can water down my recommendations. I can water down my opinion to make you happy, to bring you on, to have you as a client. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing my best work in that, and I'm not really serving you at that highest level. Um, John C. Maxwell, who's an author, he's a ex preacher actually who became a author. You want to talk about pushback that this guy had when he ran a massive church in the US and then decided that the principles he was sharing he wanted to bring into general mainstream, and he got massive pushback from his congregation and the people who felt he sold out. So he's definitely gone from pleaser to leader, definitely. And I love his works. If you've never read any of John Maxwell's stuff, it's absolutely fantastic, particularly in the area of leadership. But he talks a lot about this and about the effectiveness of your leadership will be largely determined by your preparedness to move from that pleaser and wanting to please everybody into the authentic leader you need to be and your people need you to be. Right. So being clear on who you are and what you stand for. That's the challenge of leadership. And, in doing so, you're going to come up like John did of against challenges, resistances from people who were on your path and side who are now going to be challenged by your change in direction. They may not share your worldview, your decisions or directions. So while you need to be respectful and mindful of this, it can't sway your choices and your decisions because of your fear that you're not going to be popular. If that's the only metric that you're going to go by, he's got this beautiful example and says, "Look, if the purpose of my life was to just make people happy, I'd sell ice cream or work at a circus, right? Because that's the fun place, that's the reality. But if you're going to be the leader who's basically there to make the stand, make the tough decisions, sometimes the unpopular decisions because it's the right thing to do, then you're going to endear yourself to people who are going to follow you. And the clearer you are on that, you may annoy, you may polarize people, but you're going to galvanize and you're going to attract to you the people who want your message, your product, and your service."
No, that's I'm just
Sorry,
sitting there. No,
I
no.
feel like I was in a like a preaching moment. I was channeling John C.
Yeah,
Maxwell in that moment, but it's exactly the process. Is I've learned so much from him and his journey and pathway and his teachings. So
well, yeah, you're sitting here speaking about it, but it's sometimes the first time I've ever heard these
mm,
things as well. So I'm just sitting there and just absorbing it and going, "Wow, yeah, all right, cool. I'll
it's
take that
it's
on board
yeah,
now
it's
from now on."
it's
That's
great stuff. It's really cool. So let's take some action steps for people who choose to want to take this information on, like you just said, Adam, and really use it as a blueprint to improve their life. So let's go over those 10 points again with some action steps that you may choose to use to allow you, or not allow you, but to empower you to be the leader that you deserve to be and you want to be. So number one, when you pretend to agree with everybody, a great action step could be to get clear on what you really think about it, whether what is being said is really what you feel, and perhaps start sharing your own views, even if they are different, and being okay with that,
yep.
right? So there's a bit of courage that comes into starting to speak up. There's going to be a little bit of angst that comes with that. But if you start getting really clear on is this really what I think, it will start helping you develop the best version of you.
Yeah, because you don't let it sit there and eat away at you. You start owning your decisions instead of being owned
Yep.
by things that have never come up,
Yep.
and it eats away. Trust
Yep.
me, I've had it done, and I've seen it
Yeah.
so many times. Not
Yeah.
It's not even countless. Well, it's more than countless.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just yeah,
It's about having ownership, power, and autonomy over self, and being, the captain of your own ship. That's really a case in there. So that's a really important set of action steps if you have that tendency. Right? Point number two, you feel responsible for how other people feel. Now, I mentioned before, and you did too, Adam. It's not your responsibility to make people happy. It's not your responsibility. You can seek to connect with people, but you can't put the outcome of someone's happiness on your shoulders, pure and simply. And sometimes what you're going to say and do isn't going to make people happy, and it's not about that. It's a burden you unnecessarily carry if you put your outcome, that person's happiness as your responsibility, purely and simply.
well, a way that I think about this is if I make this decision now, and this is how one of the things about when I run a business, it's not about the money.
Mm,
It's about people's livelihood. I get more satisfaction going, I now employ 7 people. I now employ 10 people. I now employ 14.
mm,
I'm providing for 12 households. I'm providing my business, not me
mm,
personally, but my business. What I had in my mind is now providing for this amount of people. And you know what? They're happy because they've got job security. They're getting the cars, they're getting the houses, they're getting to whether they're owning it or renting it, they're getting that as a result. And sometimes a decision might not lead to their immediate happiness, but it leads to their ultimate life. And so the way I justify it is this is the decision I need to make now to help employ more people and give them a better quality of life. In turn, we'll be able to raise their wages in 6 months, not a year,
yeah,
and we move up the business. So sometimes that decision now might not be the popular one, but it's the right one.
yeah.
And that's how you become a leader.
Okay, so point number three, we mentioned earlier on, is you apologize often. So if you were going to change from a pleaser to a leader, some of the action steps you might consider doing are minimizing the amount of times you use an apology, and really only using it at times where they're genuinely worthy of apologizing for. Don't overuse the word, and importantly, consider looking at some of the deeper reasons why this may be the case. I mentioned earlier that it could be self worth or self esteem issues, and you might want to look into those specific areas to understand and get some further distinctions about that. Okay, so point number four of helping you transition from a leader, a pleaser to a leader, is if you're feeling burdened by things you have to do, getting really, really clear and starting to develop clear boundaries. Um, Releasing and letting go of things that you feel you have to do, and start delegating them or just letting them go. Basically, um, realizing that they're not necessarily things that you have to do all by yourself. Ask for support if you need that support, but get into the habit of doing that regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. If you're constantly going to be a micromanager, you're always going to suffer with everything. You've got to learn how to delegate this, and that relieves so much burden. And I, d- I don't know. I don't know how to articulate that one.
Yeah,
That's
I think that's no, but you're
yeah,
spot on. You're spot on, and I think it's very close to the next one, which is point number five, which is you can't say no.
yeah,
Right? I think those two are probably the two closest ones there. One is the effect of the other,
yeah,
and once you address one, you've actually taken care of both. But getting comfortable saying no is a really important thing. It's in a previous incarnation of self where I would actually take on things that I'd go to events, functions, because I just yeah, all right, we'll go there. And even if it was an inconvenient to me, I would do it.
yeah,
And the moment I'd start saying, "Look, I'm sorry, no, I'm not doing that." Oh, why don't you want to do this? Well, look, it's just honestly, it's not something I want to do. I hope you're okay with that. And initially, there's that awkwardness, but then people go, "Okay, fine," and it doesn't become an issue if you don't
yeah, yeah,
allow it to become an issue. So that's a great discipline. So thank you, but no. Or if there's an invitation, thank you, but no, I'm not coming. Is really helpful. And Adam, that coming back to that the book Power of No from your favorite author, who you can't remember his name.
Book might have, book might not even be
Book-
called The Power
the
of No.
Power of No, but we've just raised it now. But it's
Let's write that book.
it's in the discipline of getting into the habit of saying no,
Yeah.
and not no by default, as in never being opened up to possibilities. But I think it's a no of um, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a fuck no.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it's got to be that clear almost, because getting clear on what is it that I really want. It's like, yes, I'm charging, I'm doing that. But if it's kind of like, oh, I don't know, it's not really here. Get in the habit of saying, look,
Oh, I can break that.
no.
I can swing that straight away.
There-
But yeah, you're right. When we travel, especially with the Australian consultants, when I'm with the chefing, we're all working on different stands, and it's almost like we get there at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, prepare for the day, do the whole trade show, and then once we've done the trade show, it's like, all right, well, where are we going to dinner? Oh, this person's doing dinner this night. This person's offered us dinner this night. This person's offered us dinner, and they're our clients, so they bring everyone along. But at the same time, it's you work all day, you've got to answer your emails, then you go to dinner at the end, and it just becomes like 18-hour days, 4, 5, 6 days in a row, and you're just like so exhausted. So now I just say no.
Mm.
And maybe one of the days I'll say yes, the big day or whatever, the end of the show, yeah, let's catch up and do this. But the rest of the days, I'm like, yeah, no, sorry, I'll just go back to the hotel and have some room service or something. Like I can't keep doing that all
Yeah.
the time. And it's so mentally draining.
Yeah, and you do have to, what do they say when you're on a plane?
Yeah.
That in the event of an accident and the oxygen mask is dropped from the ceiling, basically uh, take your own oxygen first before you help somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's not about selfishness, but it's basically saying honor your own needs. And if your needs aren't being met by saying yes to everything, if you're giving oxygen away to everybody else first, at the end of it, you're going to be you're cooked. You've got
Yeah.
no oxygen in yourself, and you're not honoring those parts of yourself. So you can be of service, and this is part of the. If it's not a hell yes, it's like if it resonates with you and you've got your needs full, you're coming from a full cup, and then you can help and you can express and you can live life from that place more authentically.
Yeah. Well, for instance, when we were in South Korea, we were presenting to people in the daytime, starting again, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, going, presenting to them during the day. And then we were changing the menus that night to present them again tomorrow with the new updates, the new tweaks, and all this. But if we're going out to dinner every night for 4 or 5 hours, and then you're getting back, you're waking up. We were going to the gym in the morning, the boss and I. So we're waking up at 4:30, going hitting the gym, going back to our room, preparing, get down, have breakfast together as a team. Then you're presenting all day as a team. Then you're going to dinner all day as a team. By the time you're doing the tweaks, it's 11 o'clock. You're running off 2, 3,
Yeah.
4 hours of sleep. It's just detrimental to
Yeah.
your health. And yeah, the power of no.
Yeah. So boundaries and saying no, and
Yeah.
and getting into the habit of doing that, which is really important. So point number 6 of helping you transition from pleaser to leader is if you feel uncomfortable when people are angry with you. I mentioned before, understand that it's not your responsibility to make people happy, and sometimes your decisions are going to create a reaction or a response with someone. If you compromise your decisions that are the right decisions for you, for the situation, for your organization, for your business, because you're worried that somebody else will be upset, it's going to sway what the right decision is. It's going to be watered down potentially. It's going to be compromised and not necessarily be the best decision for the situation. So that's a really big one in through there. Number 7 is that you act like people around you, and we talked about the adolescents and teenagers earlier on. It's normal for parts of our personality to be influenced by people around us. But people pleasers without a clear sense of identity are going to start behaving like the people around them just so that they can fit in. So to get really clear on who you are and what you stand for, and the more you do this and get clear on your authentic and true self, you're going to be able to attract. And this is the really important thing that I've noticed, that the more you do this, you're going to attract your tribe, your community, and your friends that are going to be attracted to that version of you. They're the people who were always there, but they're now attracted to you because the real you decided to show up.
Yeah, it happens so often. Like the second that you become your individual, Whether or not it's the same people, but when you become your individual, you find a new crew, a new tribe, and people who come and genuinely want to support you.
Yep.
And in an office sense, sometimes if you're hanging with one crew, like the marketers, but then you step out of that side, all of a sudden the sales team want to embrace you because you're all of a sudden seeing something, how the sales team who are walking the floors and meeting the clients, they needed a marketer like you.
Yep.
So they'll enhance you. And that all right, you're pleasing a different person, but you're being true to yourself.
Yep.
You're walking away from one,
Yep.
but you could find and gain momentum from other people you didn't know that were even looking at you.
Yeah. Look, I've seen it play out so many times, when we talked about ideal clients,
Yeah.
that if you're in the headspace, and so many areas people say it's all about mindset, and I'm such a big advocate of that.
Yeah.
Mindset and then proper execution. And so because you could have the action steps, but your mindset's not in the right place, so consequently you're going to get a different outcome, right? Who's going to show up to do those action steps is going to be totally different. And I know in my own so when I'm clear on who my ideal client is, when I'm in the zone, they're the people that I attract, whether it's the vibration, the energy I put out, whatever. But if I'm not at that place, I'm attracting less than ideal clients every time, and I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? So whenever that happens for me, I always do a self reflection and go, okay, what's going on here right now? Am I getting up, dressing up, and showing up as the best version of myself to attract those people, or am I dimming down the lights? Is there fear or doubt or uncertainty that's now being put out into the universe as a result of that, attracting those type of people? And the moment I make a shift, the moment I make a change, suddenly all these ideal people and clients are presenting stuff, whether it's coaching clients, what have you, and you're going, where the hell have they been? And they're like, we've been here, we've just been waiting for you to show up.
Yeah.
And the moment you showed up, knock, 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 ready to go.
Here you go. Take our money.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's what it is. So it's, when they say when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, so
Yep.
along that same lines, that's the same thing. If you can't be the leader that people need you to be unless you show up as that person.
Yeah, well, I'm a massive advocate for mindset, and going through the 75 hard challenge that we've done, which now has an app out. Well, we've got to check the app. I don't know. Have you seen the app?
No.
You're done. You're just done with the whole thing.
I just want to get through it, man. I just like right now, I'm not worried about the value and the add-ons. I just want to get to the end of it first, and then I'll worry about all the other stuff.
But like, if you look at in Melbourne at the moment, the weather in the morning is freezing.
Yeah.
And the other morning I woke up and I had glass on my windshield of my car, and that doesn't normally happen too often in Melbourne. And it was cold. But what do? You just get up and go. And you can definitely tell the type of person when you hear them first thing in the morning, oh, it's cold. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do that. And they're already making excuses before they get up and do the work. Yeah. And if you're living life like that, and live your life however you want to live. But if you live your life constantly having excuses like the weather, something that we can't control, all right, whether or not you're a greenhouse gas, you're global warming, a climate control, doesn't matter. We can't control day to day, every day. If it's hot, do your work. If it's cold, do your work. Don't change for stupid things that we can't control. And that's what this is like here. Yeah.
Good point. Good point. So point number 8 of transitioning from a pleaser to a leader is, mentioned before, you need praise to feel good if you're a pleaser. So to transition from that, an action step you might want to follow through is find ways to self-acknowledge yourself, praise yourself, and to build yourself up within your self-esteem and your self-worth. By doing so, you're filling up your own cup, okay? And in doing so, you don't feel the need to seek out the approval or the validation from others, because you can actually do that by yourself and you feel more comfortable in your own skin. So that in and of itself is a fantastic transition and lifestyle journey to be able to go through, is just be comfortable in your own skin, because then you're making decisions that are more authentic from your value structure, and they're going to resonate much better with you as well too. So that's a really big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, like in last week's episode, we had Sensei Frank here, and you could see how gracious he is, how grateful he is for all the opportunities. And yeah, as he said, he never really turned his back on anyone, but he changed directions to become a better person.
Yep.
And then we all benefit from it because when we're there as and having him as our leader, he has so many options. We ask him what happens if someone throws a right kick, and he'll tell us how to defend it, whereas a normal jiu-jitsu teacher might not know how. And makes him a better leader, but he is one of the most gracious and and thankful people. When after the episode, he thanked us so many times, and you just see he fills his own cup every day. He is sitting there going, I'm thankful for every opportunity I've had. I'm thankful for my students. I'm thankful for my school, my family. And he is filling his own cup and praising himself every day. And you can see it, it shows the whole time. He is another loud person and boisterous as well. So sometimes it might be seen as, conflict or or just
Well,
loud. But yeah,
which is actually funny you say that, because that's point number 9, and that is, the healthy conflict we talked about earlier on. So being a leader will challenge people, and by consistently avoiding conflicts at all costs, it's going to lead you to struggle to stand up for the things and the people that you believe in. And when you challenge, when you challenge people, when you create conflict, quite often it busts them open and they see possibility that happens. But it's being prepared to lean in and say, the reason I'm doing this is because I care about you. I'm not doing it to be, to polarize, or to criticize. I'm actually doing that because I genuinely care. And if it's coming with candor and compassion, you can actually help level somewhat up. You can actually hold the ladder up for them to climb by doing that. But it's being prepared to go in there. So, like I said, healthy conflict is a good thing. I'm so comfortable in that. It's if I see a thread, or I very rarely will shy away from that. And yes, some of it I have had to learn is to make the distinction between combativeness and gladiatorial conflict. Um, but I lean in, and I do it with more discernment, compassion these days. But fundamentally, if my intention is to help, I'll do that. And you don't have to be abrasive. You can basically do it with kindness, but do it nonetheless.
well, again, talking about Sensei Frank. Now that we've recorded with him and you've seen his fire, I've walked up to him after classes and I go, "Hey, you know what? Sometimes when you're on the mat, you can't see stuff, and I need you to just pull me up on everything, everything." And he's like, "Yep, done," because he's a leader. But he is a passionate guy,
Mm.
and his voice is booming. And we train in a warehouse in essence, so your voice can get lost in a place like that. So he sits there and he yells at you, but it's not through conflict; it's through passion, and he wants you to do better. And that's where it's coming from him. But if you don't understand how he is and you hear that,
Yep.
you think it's anger, you think it's frustration, you think it's conflict coming at you. But it's not. He's just being passionate and wanting you to be your best you. And he's like, you should put your left hand over there. How many times do I have to tell you? But it's not being
Creating conflict.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What? But yeah, and that's why I love working with people like him.
Yeah.
And I've seen him call you out again in a constructive way, but it comes across as a fiery, passionate exchange of words. But I've seen you go, yep, and not even bat an eye at him. I'm sure if there's been a conflict or an issue, you've gone and stepped aside and spoken about it. We don't need to know about that,
Yeah.
but that's how you handle it in essence.
It's funny because I've conditioned myself. So the drill sergeant approach, I think I might have mentioned before at some stage, does not work with me. So
Yeah.
I can block that out. So to get through to me, someone who's emotionally courageous to lean in and have that tough conversation that doesn't trigger off a defense mechanism in me is going more likely to get through. And that's why those I enjoy those tough conversations. I really do, because that's where I grow. Um, but quite often, like I said, if typical alpha male aggression comes at me, I'll meet that, and then we just have a stalemate. We don't actually get anywhere. So, someone who's emotionally intelligent enough to know that, hey, I can't be a one trick pony. I can't keep doing this same and expecting to be able to get my point across. Is how do I evolve and be able to use a broader, diverse range of skills to be able to communicate with people? basically challenging on assumptions. You talked about femininity before. I found more impact in being able to challenge someone. So if someone has said something, and if I full throttle came at them there, they're going to get defensive. But you change the essence of your communication, and you go, "Hey, listen, Adam, I'm just curious. Is it okay if I just challenge you on some fundamental life beliefs that you have?" And if you hear what I'm saying, I'm basically saying, "Dude, I don't agree with a whole lot of things. Are you open to being challenged on that?" But
Yeah.
because I'm communicating that in a different way, the protective part of your brain doesn't sense an attack. So it's going to go, okay,
Yeah.
let's have a chat. And it's fascinated me. So anytime someone who was smart enough to be able to communicate and engage with me in a way that I felt safe and could basically lean in and have tough conversations, boom, keys to the castle, you're in. But if you don't have a strategy or a game plan that's diverse enough to adapt to everybody, you're going to miss a lot of people.
Well, in kitchens, I've had similar experiences, and we call them bollockings. And the
Yep.
head,
I think we've a lot of us have been the product of
yeah,
bollocking at some
yeah.
stage.
So anyway, head chef will come up to you and he'll give you a good, good earful.
Yeah.
And this is what I say to the new chefs that are coming up. And if they go, well, what's your tips and tricks? And I go, well, if you're going to yell at someone, there's only two ways they're going to respond. One way is they'll either shut down
Mm.
and you lose productivity. And number two, they'll come back and they'll bite back. And that could be in a chef situation, could be in physical
Yep.
aggression because
Yep.
you don't know how to
Yep.
articulate yourself. Some of these kids drop out of school at 14 and they only start cooking because
Yep.
that's what they fall back on.
Yep.
So they don't have that build up or that knowledge or that basis to come back and go, hey, you know what? I don't like that. Can you just stop and let's talk about this like humans? And that's where the conflict comes in kitchens. I'd much rather be a head chef and come up to a person and go, hey, I'm just intrigued. Why are you doing it this way? Because, on the menu it's set out like this. And then you can give them a chance to actually go, oh, I was doing it like this because I wanted to change it up. And then you go, hey, maybe next time come to me. Let's talk about it before you just change it and go that way.
Yep.
And then you sort of diffuse the situation, but you get your point across and you
Yep.
become a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think a really big distinction here is in those scenarios, I think we've both kind of said it in a roundabout way, is you're challenging the concept and idea versus the person,
Yeah.
right? So the only it's going to happen if you've established trust, and there's a big distinction between you're playing the ball, not the man or woman in the situation. You're just going, hey, here's the idea out here. Let's debate that, not you or me, or that person, but really the concept or the idea. And like I said, you have to have trust to begin with in the first place. So rounding it out, point number 10 of your transition from pleaser to leader, we mentioned before about, you know, if you don't admit where your feelings are hurt, if you're not having those authentic, I guess, discussions, number one with yourself, first and foremost, and then other people, what's going to happen is that when you're denying your angry, sad, embarrassed, and disappointment, even when you're emotionally wounded with what's going on, you start creating boundaries. Barriers around those emotions. You're not really sharing your truth and sharing how you feel. So what this does is it doesn't allow the other person to really around you get to see you. It doesn't allow them to connect, trust, and build a relationship around that. And a lot of the times, and particularly in a lot of the movement in leadership now, they talk about the vulnerability component. They talk about authentic leadership. They talk about the person as the leader who is sharing their own fears, doubts, and uncertainties in a way that endears them to their followers. And as a result of that, they have more trust in the leader. So it's a really important component is to not necessarily get. And anytime I've shared this with people that I've worked with, I've basically said, have you shared with the people in your team um, the what's going on for you? No, I couldn't do that because then they would doubt the leader that they are. And there's a big progression for people to understand that people don't actually see that as a sign of weakness. It's not like I don't know what to do, don't know what to do. It's basically going, hey, you know what? I'm sitting in uncertainty right now, and here's what's going on for me. I don't know. Once I have clarity, I'll be able to move forward. People can buy into that. because you're showing them the range of feelings and emotions. You're not giving them the micro details, which is sometimes beyond what they need to know and may create more uncertainty or anxiety for them. But it's just showing them that, hey, as a leader, this is what's going on for me. This is what I'm challenging or challenged by, or what's coming up for me. And that actually endears you to your people so many times.
Vulnerability isn't weakness.
It's boom, boom, boom.
That's all I'm going to say on that.
That's a great one.
Yeah, and Jim hits on that all the time, and it's one of the biggest things I've learned from you as well. And it's becoming more open that vulnerability isn't weakness.
Yeah, yeah. So that rounds out I guess the podcast in the sense in terms of the context that we want to share with there, and the big takeaways really are about the being a pleaser is quite often a symptom of an underlying set of reasons or situations that serve the situation in the short term, but don't really endear you if you want to grow and move forward. And if you want to be the leader who um, has an impact on not only your community, your family, your world, there's going to be uncomfortable moments. You're going to need to lean into those difficult situations. There are going to be people who will follow you straight away. There'll be people wwho need a bit more time, and there's going to be other people that no matter what you do, they're not going to follow through. And I think it's coming to the point of being okay with that. That they talk about haters, they talk about dissenters, talk about people who basically challenge you, and embrace those people is really the case in there. If you're not um, if you're not polarizing people, you're not on purpose. And if you're not, I'd much rather have and it's so true. I see that a lot of people, and I'd much rather have people disagree with me passionately and move off or get out of basically unfriend me, whatever, because I then know that the people who are with me are actually with me.
Yeah.
And the people who are undecided, you need to give them a reason why they're engaging with you as a leader in your organization. And if they're not the right fit, eventually they're basically going to be found out. So to me, it's easier to have people who dislike you and what you represent, because at least you know where they stand. But more importantly, they know where you stand.
Yep.
Right.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like I'm on the spot. I was just thinking about other things like I'm okay if you don't like me.
Yeah.
I'm really like how many people you going to meet in your life?
Mm.
How many people are going to love you? You're not going to have 100% success rate. Don't ever think like that. And if you are, you're trapped.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for you. And I'm being totally honest. Like, you need to break that mindset, and you need to go, hey, not everyone's going to get along with me. I'm hitting on what you've been saying. Not everyone's going to get along with me. Not everyone's going to love everything that comes out of my mouth, but I'm being true to me.
Yeah.
And I can live with that.
Yeah. And it's not selfish.
Yeah.
It's not actually selfish. It's basically acknowledging that you're doing the best you can. You're going out there, but recognizing that your best expression may still not hit the mark for everybody. And what happens is and I when I've spoken to people who write music or write books, they say the same thing. There's always that fear of, hey, I'm going to put it out there, and people may not like it, but if I put it out with the expectation that I'm going to write something that everybody's going to like, then I'm not really connecting with what I really want to talk about. I'm actually looking for it's a popularity contest, and I'd much rather put it out there and have people who unsubscribe, don't like what I write, and go, "This is not for me," because it creates space for the people who want to follow you.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm done. Adam, is there anything you want to say to round out the podcast before we finish up?
Yeah, you touched on it just a little bit, and I just wanted to say that leaders don't just need to do this once
Mm.
or any of these exercises. What you need to do to be a great leader is to keep revisiting all of these.
Yep.
Keep looking at your ideal clients. Keep looking at how you're managing teams. Keep looking at all of this stuff, and focus on your personal development, because this year's version of you is not next year's version. So you got to redo this all next year. And some people go and do it every 6 months. It's up to you how often you want to do it. How far do you want to excel in life? How big do you want to grow? That's how much work you put in yourself. It's like when you're cultivating a garden. If you just sprinkle 2 seeds, 2 seeds are going to grow or 2 plants are going to grow from that. But if you sprinkle your whole garden and you fertilize it and you water it and you sing to it and you play music, there's studies saying that if you play music to your plants, they grow better. If you really enhance what you plant, you're going to grow a massive award winning garden. And that's what you've got to do with leadership and with your mindset. You've got to constantly revisit this stuff and you've got to constantly be growing. And that's it from me.
No, that's a great way to round everything up. So thank you very much, Adam. It was
Thank
awesome.
you.
I really want to thank everybody for joining us once again. I just want to remind everybody to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and our extended Launch and Beyond community on these channels. Please post any questions, any comments you may have about the podcast or anything you'd like support with. Quite often, a lot of the times your thoughts and questions are the same ones others have as well, but nobody's game enough to come forward and ask it and share it for fear that there's something wrong with them or whatever. But the courage to actually start is fantastic. We'd really love to be able to engage people on our network in there as well. We're getting a ton of individual messages,
which we appreciate,
which we really appreciate, and it's great. And we're so mindful. And sometimes the answers or the guidance that we have with those would be fantastic in a more extended format. So a forum, I should say. So please engage with us in our forum. It'll be really helpful for everybody. And the dialogue that's created will be create a ripple effect far greater than you can ever possibly imagine. So that'd be good. If you're enjoying the podcast and finding value in it, we're really grateful if you go over to iTunes and leave us a review. We're really thankful for the people who've already done that. It just helps us reach a larger audience and help more people. So from me, once again, thank you. We look forward to basically being with you, not hearing with you, but we look forward to being with you our next episode. So for me, it's got to be like that.
Thanks, guys. Bye.